Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Kate. You have made a dream of mine come true because you've joined us for books at lunchtime, but it's not actually lunchtime at all. I've stayed late after the shop is closed so I can sit in the children's section and read children's books, and in particular, yours.
An empty children's section at night is like a dream.
That's right. It really is. But it is lunchtime for you, isn't it?
It is. I'm calling you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Right. Okay. That's quite a ways away.
Yes.
So, what brings us together?
Well, I guess today we are talking about Joy to the World, which is the latest of my picture books. My books have generally focused on the vastness of humanity and people and how they live all over the world. So this has been a fun topic because it's both very focused, because it's one specific holiday with one specific faith, but then really shows the incredible breadth that one holiday can take on around the world, and sort of decenters the, Western version of Christmas that I think people are generally familiar with.
I found that really refreshing, actually. Sorry, because fortunately, we see a lot of books about celebrating diversity and different colors and different races, but to really just pause and focus on culture and how that's different for something that we do all share, I found really refreshing, actually.
Well, thank you. So the way that it sort of like came about more deeply is I have this other book, Let's Celebrate, which came out a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that is a more sort of broad overview of different kinds of celebrations around the world, from different faiths, different cultures, different kinds of celebrations. And I just, like, after writing this, I just felt like, oh my gosh, there's still so much left to explore. Like, this gives an overview, but there's so many sort of specifics. And over and over again, going into shops at Christmas time, I felt like, as much as the industry has kind of diversified offerings across the board, I felt like the Christmas offerings were still very sort of like Snoopy Christmas, kind of IP sort of things, or classic sort of like Santa Claus type books. But I was just like, what, is there something different that we could offer, given that I've built up this sort of expertise in talking about different cultures, that could be both a really nice gift at Christmas time and like appealing to children, and not just sort of like all nutrition, but also have a lot of information that even maybe grown-ups wouldn't know about.
And it is divided by countries and shows scenes of families at Christmas. So I'm looking at Serbia right now. Bring in the straw and we'll cover the floor, drop in some spring treats and sprinkle some more. The adults cluck like chickens and we wait Piu, let's pick up the goodies that our mama threw. So it's got nice rhyme, nice big double page spread. And actually, I really appreciate that there is a bit of foreign language on each page with a pronunciation guide.
So the book takes you, like you said, to 13 different countries around the world. And one sort of improvement from Let's Celebrate, and a request that we got from Let's Celebrate, was just put the name of the country on each book. Don't make me think that hard about it, right? So that is definitely something that we've added. But the thing about these books that is so joyful and exciting is that I work with a consultant from each of the countries.
Oh, nice.
Make sure that the way both the text and the illustrations are accurate and modern and up to date, because I learned the hard way on Let's Celebrate, thinking, okay, I have a background in academia. I have been making children's books for Barefoot for now over 11 years. Like, surely my expertise would be enough for me to be able to research, find out this information with, using the resources around me, a library, whatever, the normal way that an academic would research something, and come up with reasonably accurate information about all of these celebrations. And I was astonished that actually, when it came to information about cultures, what people do, how people celebrate, that those things actually move really quickly and change. When you think about maybe how your family celebrates Christmas or whatever is, your big holiday, and then how your grandparents, might have celebrated it with your parents when they were kids, that it moves quickly and changes and evolves quickly. And I wanted to make sure that I was using, really showing something that was realistic and accurate. And I was surprised very much with Let's Celebrate that once I got to the part of starting to ask people if this was all right, you know, here's what I've done, here's the illustration, here's the text, is this mostly right? And a couple of times the people were just like, no, it's not at all, you know, people just don't do this at all anymore, or this is based on information that's conflated, or, you know, incredible how much was wrong. So now as I work on books like this, it is my standard that I start out with finding somebody who personally celebrates the holiday and talking to them before I even get into writing and illustrating. So I make new friends each time I make these books. So that's the really part.
Now, you mentioned about working with Barefoot Books for 11 years. Do you want to tell me a bit more about that? Because I think you were quite close to the process in creating this book.
Absolutely. So Barefoot Books is an independent children's publisher based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, Concord, Massachusetts. Now we just moved offices, but was founded in the UK 30 years ago. So we have very strong ties to the UK. We're distributed in the UK. I'm so sorry, my dog is chewing a bone and I just completely lost my train of thought for a second. So I have been working at Barefoot Books for 11 years, full-time in the editorial department. And because we're a small publisher, the editors both edit the texts, acquire texts, and also art direct the books, you know, hire the illustrator and work with the illustrators to decide what's going to go on each page. So actually for both of these books, I was both author and editor and art director for them.
Wow.
So was able to go all the way through with, you know, writing the book and then finding the illustrator, hiring the illustrator, and working very closely with them to develop the artwork.
That's really unusual, from what I understand, to have that much influence.
Yes, and in fact, I found it incredibly stressful to feel like I was the only person who really had the full picture of each of the celebrations. They're very detailed, you know, for whatever's on the page, I learned a whole lot more on each thing to be able to then distill it down. And there were points when I would become so bogged down in details that it was just like, oh, I just wish somebody else knew about this. So I could call them up and be like, okay, on the Serbia page. So I'm working on the third book in this series right now on harvest festivals around the world, which will come out next year. And I have finally wised up and I've got one of my colleagues to edit and art direct the book. So once I've written it, I'm handing it off to her and she's working with the illustrator. So I think it's a little too much to try to write, edit, and art direct your own book without enough, you know, without being able to get enough input from other people.
I've really have torn ideas about that, because I think everyone has such strong views about what they want their book to be like. But we always say that going through the editorial process makes so much stronger a book. This is why we really advocate for people to go to a proper publisher, because it will have been through an editor's expertise and art design and all of that. So, I mean, it's beautiful. You've done a remarkable job, given that you had to wear all the hats.
I shouldn't try to make it sound like I'm a one-man band. Of course, I work very closely with our in-house designer, Sarah Soldano, our design director, who I've worked with the whole time I've been at Barefoot, and I also work very closely with the other editors on the team.
And the illustrator.
I'm not just sort of, you know, in a closet by myself making a book. It definitely has a lot of other people who are checking it. And then, like I said, I'm working with cultural consultants from around the world too, who are helping hold these books to a very high standard of, you know, accuracy.
And you have quite a good illustrator as well, don't you, Sophie Fatis?
Yes, she's a Barefoot favorite illustrator. She is a French illustrator living in Italy. And she's illustrated more than a dozen, maybe more like 20 books for Barefoot Books over the years. And she's one of our favorites. So it was a joy to get to work with her on this. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, so we are also really interested in talking to you because your book we came across in the Booksellers Association's catalogue of best books for Christmas. So this book has been circulated amongst hundreds of bookshops around the UK. And your book is highlighted as one of the best bets for Christmas. And we're doing this as part of a 12 Stories of Christmas Instagram, joining in with 11 other bookshops. So that's all very exciting that they'll be all sharing this as well, which is why I'm going to go ahead and ask now, if your readers have really enjoyed this and your previous books, and they want to know more because they want to fill up their shelves, what would you recommend that they have a look at now?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Like I said, I've worked at Barefoot Books, so I have I'm going to be a little biased and show you some really fabulous related Barefoot books
If
to
they're fabulous, it doesn't matter where they come from.
and let's celebrate, or of course, the foundational ones. And next year, look out for Harvest Days. But if learning about sort of different things around the world is interesting and stimulating for you, and you want to do more, Barefoot, this is sort of what this is our bread and butter. This is what Barefoot has been about since our very first list was published 30 years ago. Is an interest in the very best art and story from around the world to, open the hearts and minds of children. So we have a lot of the great books like that. A new book on our list is called Dumpling Day, which is incredibly adorable and introduces kids to 10 different kinds of dumplings. Food that is consumed all over the world. So like Let's Celebrate and Joy to the World on each spread sort of takes you to a different place. But instead of sort of taking you all around the world, these are immigrant families all living in the same neighborhood.
Nice.
And it's got incredible richness and diversity in the pages. And what's fun is it's also counting. So you count the dumplings as they go up, and you also learn different words for family members in different languages. And I feel like I can really brag on this because this is not a book that I edited or art directed or acquired. I just think it is so fantastic. It's by Meera Sriram, who's an author we just love. And at the end, there are recipes.
Good. Yeah.
A favorite. I had a friend of mine who was staying with me at the time do the recipe testing on this. So I've eaten all 10 of the dumplings. They're phenomenal.
You have to, don't you? You just have to.
And so if people are interested in sort of around the world, we have two sort of in-depth bigger books. Barefoot Books World Atlas might be one that's familiar to people. This is one of our kind of more popular titles in bookshops. It's illustrated by David Dean, who's one of our favorite illustrators who does a lot of cover illustrations, especially in the UK. And it is entirely hand-painted map of the world.
They're beautiful.
That include these great little like kind of icons painted on there. There are labels. There's great little like flaps and fold outs. And I love this because it's not just sort of like dry, maps and information. It begins to tell a story about the world, and
which is the best way to learn it.
It's the way I'm kind of like a big kid, which is why I make picture books. So this is like learning about the world in this way is really helpful. And we find that this is a really good sort of support tool to have when you're reading any of these books, because, you get interested in what's going on the Serbia page where children are picking treats out of hay, which is truly strange and bizarre if you aren't familiar with it. And you kind of get the question of like, okay, well, where's Serbia? What's going on with that? So it's nice to then, kind of go from there into a book. I use this with my 8-year-old daughter a lot, and sort of scaffolding learning about the world. This also has an app that goes with it. So that's really cool.
We'll get that in.
And Children of the World, full disclosure, I co-authored this book, and I co-authored it with the co-founder of Barefoot Books, Tessa Strickland, who lives in the UK in Bath. And she is my mentor who taught me everything about making books. And writing this book with her was like the greatest joy ever. We wrote it collaboratively. In Oxford, I came over and worked on it together. And it is a big deep dive book, also with illustrations by David Dean. That's mostly illustrations, very few words, just all about the incredible sort of like breadth and richness and variety of human life. And it to me contains sort of the essential truth that's in all the books I work on, which is you're a part of the world, but you're a world all your own. And
nice.
Which is the kind of the perspective that I like to bring into all of our books. You're just one of billions of people, but then each one of those billions of people has sort of infinite complexity and richness. So this book is a really great book for starting conversations about thinking about things around the world. It doesn't go as deeply into those ideas, but starts those conversations. My favorite is these kids, everybody writing their own name.
That's fantastic. And I really like that this topic is being covered by illustrations. When my two were younger, we had a book about children from around the world, and it was photographs, which was fine. And they spent a lot of time looking at it, especially, anyway. But I noticed how quickly they dated the photographs, the clothes, the just the colors of the photographs looked really old-fashioned, and they lost interest. Probably grew out of it anyway, but illustrations don't date in the same way that a photograph does.
That's the hope. And David Dean is an absolutely phenomenal illustrator. A lot was given over to him on this, you know, whereas something like Joy to the World, I've already very much decided what the scene's going to be and where it's going to be when I hire an illustrator and talk to them. For David, it was more like, draw us a picture that communicates the idea that names, you know, have this incredible variety and richness. And it was really on him to do the research on the details, and he's incredible with that.
Wow, that's quite a list that you've offered us. Oh, you look like you have one more. Show us one
gosh,
more.
Okay, and I'll just say one, I'll just direct you to another part of the list, which is we have, and kind of maybe my favorite books are, we have all of these books that are told by people from different cultures around the world that feature modern kids doing modern kid things. So Dinner on Domingos just came out, which is a story about an Ecuadorian American family getting together on Sundays. Run Little Chosky, which takes place in Peru and is a historical fiction story. It takes place in the Inca Empire.
Nice.
I guess that's not a modern child, but still another culture. And To Carnival, which takes place in St. Lucia. And talks about a little girl who's late to Carnival. And we have this sort of growing part of our list where we're constantly trying to find new stories from around the world to feature and talk about.
Well, it's really exciting to hear everything that Barefoot Books is doing to bring these to children's imaginations and to open their minds up about their own role in it. It's really exciting, and we'll be keeping an eye out for what you do next, definitely to get the Harvest book in next year. So
thank you.
Thank you ever so much for talking to us today.
It's my pleasure.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you to you too.
Bye. Bye. Wow.